All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Araya Harley, and I am the Communications and the Events Manager for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. And we appreciate you joining us today. We are going to be going over a workshop called Beyond PPP. And so, what's less known and what's not alone, a little bit of information about that. This will be an open forum, so you can communicate via chat, or you can raise your hand or ask directly a question. And our speaker today is Richard Tobin, and he is with Assura Financial, and he will be assisting us with going over the presentation. As I mentioned, this will be recorded. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. I will send this recording to everyone who has registered when this is done, and I am available via chat and will be here. So I will go ahead and give the floor to Richard. Thank you so much for presenting for us today.
Thank you. Ready to go? Good?
Ready to go?
Okay. Okay, hello everybody. So get started here. So the world's changing fast. So I'll give you a little bit of background to what I was thinking when we set this up. But it's beyond PPP. Everybody knows what PPP loans are, but there's other ways of being able to get, finances. Those many different programs that the government is offering, and so I wanted to touch on a few things that are much less known, not alone, more focusing on specialized tax incentives that really been around for years and decades, but billions, but not trillions of dollars goes uncollected that different business owners are actually entitled to. That's kind of what I was thinking to do here. So before we get started, gotta do those disclosures. Is I'm not a tax professional nor a legal professional. Therefore, I am not giving any tax advice nor any legal advice. This is more informative, and speak to your tax professional or your legal professional. I really like to work with them and complement what they do. It's a good working relationship. So some of the things that I have in my quiver, everybody asks what I do. What I do can be complex working with businesses. I only see some of the things I listed here as arrows in my quiver, but I do some niche things in addition to some standard things. But I work with alternative investments, cost remediation, and specialized tax incentives, which is what we're going to be focusing on this evening. I do people insurance. That means I don't insure cars and boats and buildings and things of that sort. I do group benefits, and then specialist retirement plans for business owners. Unique things there. So, a few niche things there just to give you a little idea. I'm an advisor in what I do. Okay, let's move on. That's not why you came here. So some of the assumptions in this morning's presentation is, again, world is moving really quickly. Things are changing so rapidly. When, Araya and I spoke, we actually spoke a few months ago. This is back in March. Some of the things we spoke about weren't as they are now. They weren't well known. Sometimes some things are becoming a little bit more well known, but a lot of things are changing fast out there and happening. So that's just something to keep in context. And something else I think is really important is there is a lot of Zoom fatigue. So I'm going to try and keep this pretty basic, not too much detail, not drilling down. You don't need to be an expert. The way I work also is I'm independent and I work with a bunch of experts. So, even drilling down on everything I'm talking about, ideally even better, deeper, more detailed experts in everything that I do. And I just find that everybody's just so overwhelmed on the Zoom. So it's better if there's interest to have either my contacts at the end of on the bottom of the slides, and or talk to your tax professional, your attorney, whatnot. And I'd also be happy to have a conversation in that. That's just something to think about. So really what I'd like to do here is, so Rowena, right? Are you audible? Let's see. So depending on the size, hi. So I was going to have, a little bit more, let's see here. I wanted to go into this program here. Give me 1 second and maybe have a little participation if we have. Let's see here. 1 second here. This is not doing what it's supposed to do. Give me a second here. Previous. Give me a second. I wanted to get into. Oh no. 1 second. This is. Do you see the screen?
I can't. Not yet.
I'm trying. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is get into. Oh darn it! I'm trying to get into my Okay, it's not going to work. I'm not going to do what I was trying to do. Now I got to get back into Zoom. Jeez. Give me a second here. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me get to this. Let me get into, okay, good. Let me get into Zoom. I got it. Okay, here we go. Zoom. Why is that Zoom not working? I love technology. Why is the Zoom not working? Come on. Oh, I get it. No, that's not working. Oh, there it is. Okay. I love this. Okay, share screen. Let's do that again. Okay. So basically, what I work with. Can you see my screen? It looks black right here. See this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so at least what I do to give a little bit of an illustration, and what I'd like to do is dig down a little bit more, is to take some examples that make that different individuals actually have. So, because some of the specialized tax incentives have to do with the ownership of property, what your employees, the different activities that you actually do, what your payroll does. So let's take a business and let's work together if we can. And if not, I'll just kind of put some stuff out there. Let's say a manufacturer, knowing a common manufacturer that we might have. Let me just put one thing here. Manufacturing. Okay. So what would be a common, let's say, how much their property, the commercial property might be? Would you say what, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million? Any thoughts? No. I'm going to put, just for simplicity, let's say it's $1 million. Let's say do about 250 in renovations. That's actually pretty cheap. I'm actually working with someone right now just in renovations. The electricity is like 500,000, and looking for a few in Seattle. You're looking at let me just add this 2 million. I'm going to do this because that's pretty, for what's going on here in the Northwest, is not realistic. I like round numbers. Okay, property taxes. Let's say they got about $40,000 in property taxes. Okay, and then a payroll. So this one I'm thinking about. I know this one has about 350,000 in payroll. Yeah, that's that. They have 10 employees, actually 7 employees. Oh, this one actually has 7 employees. They actually hire about maybe 2 every other year, 2 employees. They don't take any credit cards, and I don't know about that. So workers' comp, not in our state. Okay. So let's say you have a company of this sort. So potentially the first one over here, hiring incentives, could potentially get about $2,400 in hiring incentives. Credit card, we also negotiate with a credit card merchant. That's not really what I wanted to focus on here. What we also do is work on the commercial real estate taxes, but that's not what I'm working on. If they have a commercial real estate like we showed, which is about $2.5 million, we potentially can get them an accelerated depreciation of about $185,000 off their taxes, their quarterly taxes. So some of the things I wanted to focus on is this hiring incentive, these property taxes, and then a few other factors. But this gives you a little bit of a visual, maybe of practical numbers. That makes sense? Give you a little bit of a sense there. So hopefully, let me do this. Let me get back into my love Zoom. Usually what I do is I like to have, I have 2 screens on my other computer, but it doesn't have a good system. So let's do this. Okay, let's get back in here. So let's discuss a few things here. So to get the assumptions, did a couple examples. Now, you need to be thinking about when you're looking at specialized tax incentives are government programs. First of all, are you getting paid for your employees? There's going to be a couple things here. I say if you're not, you should be, because the money's sitting on the table. There's hiring incentives, and there's also retention credit, and this retention credit's been around for years and decades. And to introduce you to that, and there's some other programs also. As I was kind of hinting at, unlocking the cash in your commercial real estate. So we'll discuss that in a minute, because if you have, let's say you had that $2.5 million in your real estate, 2 million in the actual property, and about 500,000 in renovations, and then you needed a loan. Well, instead of taking a loan, let's say that $185,000 that you're probably paying at least 10%, 15%, depending, that's cash you can put on the table and not have that high, loan costs. Anyways, so basically, the question I ask: are you accessing the government incentives? There's state, there's local, and there's federal incentives. Larger corporations generally do access a lot of these. It's interesting when I speak to even regional companies, they've heard them, or they've worked for a larger corporation. They're familiar with some of these tax incentives. They didn't realize you can get them from as a smaller, medium-sized business, or some of them are just draconian or very hard to work with. And so it's important to work with a group that actually can help get access and make it realistic. And what's important to realize, each year there are billions, actually potentially trillions of dollars that are not claimed by businesses that are entitled to these different government programs. I don't know about you, but I find that the government, I've never had the government IRS come and say, hey, let's charge you less. They're going to find a way to charge me or take money that I'm creating. And so they're, at the same time, they are offering different incentives and different programs for me to decrease those taxes. So they're really not giveaways, but they are offsetting the money that I'm making and I'm creating. They're offsetting it and trying to help that I'm hiring more people, I'm retaining more people, I can become more profitable and enhance my cash flow, so I can continue hiring and be productive in society. I think that's how we need to be looking at these different programs. Fair enough. Okay, so one of the programs I wanted to talk about, I didn't illustrate it. It's something called the Employee Retention Credit. Sometimes it's called ERC. Other places call it ERTC. It's been interesting. The Employee Retention Credit, the Employee Retention Credit, it's actually been around. A lot of people don't realize it's been around for pretty much decades. It's in 2010 under President Obama, it was utilized. President Trump utilized it. It's so it's been utilized for decades, even prior to that. So what happened when the federal government wanted to get money into business owners' pockets? They utilized an existing incentive and then just modified it. And so they back in March 2020 in the CARES Act, they utilized the ERC tax credit, and then but at that time, just to give you a little foreshadowing, you had an either or. You could get a PPP loan, or you were able to get the ERC. In December, in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, they allow not only larger companies to be able to get the ERC, but now you can get the PPP and the ERC. So that's why a lot of people didn't know about the Employee Retention Credit, because two things. One is because because so many people got the PPP, and that was advertised and marketed and publicized so much, and the ERC really wasn't much known. And then when the law changed, it really wasn't so big in 2020 that it made an impact, and there were and for individuals, tax professionals to train themselves, payroll companies to train themselves, it was a lot of work without a lot of money they were able to be put in the pocket of their clients. But in March 2021, with the American Rescue Plan Act, it became extremely significant to business owners. And therefore, I've seen it all across the board. I've seen some payroll companies picking up. I've seen some larger CPA firms, maybe some small firms. So there are some groups doing it. Whether they have the expertise or not, I don't have enough of an opinion yet. How complex and things of that sort. You have to talk to your professional. And but the one thing to notice also is you can't double dip. I mean, you can't take from the same part of the PPP and the ERC. You have to be able to decide where you're going to take the money from, but they can work together. Just a little note for you to know, back in 2020, who was eligible, there's two factors that made you eligible. One is your business was closed. Let's say like in Washington State, in other states, they actually closed down your business. You were not able to do business because of state mandates, or your receipts, your gross receipts were reduced by 50%. If that was true from March until through December, then you could, then 50% of, 50% of, 70% of your employee, up to $10,000 of your employee payroll, you were able to get back. So depending about 7,000 per employee that you were able to retain. So it wasn't huge, but it was definitely something. And initially you weren't able to do it with PPP, but then that changed. So that's okay. So in 2021, besides allowing it for larger businesses and also allowing it with PPP, this also is significant. Is now it's not 50% of your gross receipts; it's actually 20% of your gross receipts, based on a similar quarter to the either 2019 or 2020. And now each quarter you can actually obtain up to 70% of your employee's quarterly paycheck. So up to $10,000. So each employee theoretically could give you this credit would give you up to $7,000 a quarter per employee. So theoretically that could be, $28,000. Again, you have to have that decrease, or at least your company shut down, and it has to be, and you have to have, right, and you can't double dip with PPP. So there's some complications and complexity for people to explore. But initially, this is what I was referring to, is people didn't know when we started looking at this class, or this workshop. They knew about PPP, but very few CPAs, very few payroll companies, very few were actually aware of the ERC credit. It's become a little more popular, a little bit well known. I see it all across the board, what people are charging, what they know, what the education. So our company's been doing this for, the group I work with represent, they've been doing specialized tax incentives for about 20 years. This is not new to them. So we do it well. We're in touch with the clients as the laws change. But I also recommend to my clients that speak to your tax professional, teach your payroll company, and decide what works best for you. I'm pretty libertarian when it comes to that, but I think people need to know about that. It's a lot of money there. So if you have any questions, we can speak. The next thing that's really important that can be good money for people, there's something called there's hiring incentives. There's something called. Is there any questions, by the way? Maybe there's a question someone might have. Aria?
I don't see any in the
Aria,
chat.
I'm sorry. What's that? Oh, in the chat?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, fair enough. I'm not good at the chat yet. I haven't gotten that good. So let's talk about the hiring incentives. So there are multiple hiring incentives. Congress or state governments, local governments, they want certain populations to be hired. Okay, they want certain populations to be hired, and one of them is the Workers' Opportunity Tax Credit. There are many others. Now, what's interesting, this actually started in 1940s. The reason they did that is they wanted people to hire veterans and give companies, businesses money in order to incentivize them to hire veterans. In the 70s, it started becoming it's for people for companies to hire ex-felons or welfare recipients. Often this is known as the Veterans Credit, or it is sometimes known as the Veterans Credit. Sometimes it's known as the ex-felons credit. It's actually much broader. And by the way, the welfare piece I found interesting. It doesn't need to be that person is necessarily on welfare. It could be that you have someone in your home that is on welfare, children, maybe an adult. It's fairly broad. In the 1970s, it became much more significant, and then 2008, it was broadened even more, largely seen as a job creation. So there are a lot of different programs on hiring incentives. I just put some here on the lower side: manufacturing payroll credits, technical job, enterprise zones. That's different communities, different locations. There's for indigenous Native Americans, startups, small business tax credit. There's a lot of these programs. Now, what's interesting, a lot of large corporations do this and know about it. I've talked to some restaurant owners, and they didn't realize two things I'm noticing with hotels, restaurant owners, other groups like that. When they work for larger corporations, they kind of knew about it. They saw it. First, they didn't realize they could do it when they're small or medium. And there's another reason that many business owners don't do it. It's the paperwork is really, really annoying and difficult. You have to turn the paperwork in within 28 days of the hire. And so you have to get it to the employee, get it back, things of that sort. So what I'm trying to say, these can be very powerful incentives. You can, for people who qualify, it could be about 900. You can get up about $980 all the way up to $960, $9,600. So if for hiring a qualified employee and these things stack, you could potentially, when you hire someone, the government will actually give you $9,600, up to $9,600 just for hiring a person. But what you need to know is you need to have the employee sign a certain form no later than the day of hire. Okay, just so you're aware of that. But this is a significant program. The challenge is, again, is people don't know about it, and second of all, the paperwork can be very, very difficult, and that's why over $1 billion in these credits go unclaimed. I actually should be unclaimed, not claimed, unclaimed each year. The group that I work with, they believe in what they call the blue ocean. You know, there's a red ocean where everybody's attacking and working. The blue ocean is where so few people are. So this group, besides working with large corporations, Econo Lodge is with the larger clients, is they also wanted to make something that would help the small, medium-sized business owner. So what they did is they created a software. We actually have an app, an application software on your phone, software on the your laptop that you can actually enter into the system the name of the client of your candidate when you're hiring them. Then what you can do is you actually can send something to your employee, which is not anonymous, but the questions they answer can be very personal, and so the employee can actually answer them online on their phone, so the employer doesn't know what the answers are. But what's pretty cool, first of all, it's a very easy system. Second of all, what our AI does throughout the United States, and we have many different clients, is it will calculate a likely dollar amount of what the incentive will be for that employee. We hook into state, federal, local databases and be able to calculate the number. It's not absolute. It's based on our AI and our experience, but it gives you a pretty good number of what that person the hiring will be. Then what happens is you push a button, and this actually goes back to our support staff. Support staff does all the filing for the for the for your company. Whether it needs to be handwritten or it can be electronic. Different states require different things. They do all that, and then they give you the quarterly. They give you the forms to be able to file with your tax professional. So the idea here is there's a lot of money on the table going unclaimed, and it's actually now accessible. So one thing is for you to know about it, and the second thing is to find a provider that can actually help you with it. Shameless plug that our group can do it. I can help you with that, but if you have other groups, I think it's important for you to at least explore it. Okay, so so first of all, we have the employee retention credit. That's a lot of money on the table if your company was closed or you had reduced receipts. Second of all is you have those hiring incentives, really important. Now there's a third concept. Those have to do with the employees. Now let's talk about what the money in your real estate. So there's something called the cost segregation. Cost segregation is something when you have property, there's called depreciation. There's certain parts of your property that where there's wear and tear. And as a business owner or owner of a commercial real estate, you're able to write it off. There is a recapture in the end, but you can write it off. Many accountants, not all, many will largely do a 39-year depreciation. Some will maybe do 15-year depreciation. But there is a level of specialty that ultimately is required. Either a CPA you could do a not guesstimate, but be able to you can either assume what the costs are, evaluate, or you could do something called an engineering. You can use engineers to actually come and to really segregate and go into the details of the different parts of the property. So, for example, one thing that might be valuable to understand, let's say you have carpet. Carpet sometimes wears out, especially in commercial real estate, let's say every 5 years. If you do everything on a 39-year depreciation and you replace the carpet, let's say 5, 6 times over that period of time, you potentially could be losing that depreciation. And that depreciation likely, I'm not a CPA, you have to talk to your tax professional, but that's often not even going to be recaptured. So that's money in a business owner, commercial real estate's pocket that they're not taking advantage of. So it's really used for accelerated depreciation, and by looking at different parts of the building, really detailing into different details of the building. We happen to use engineers. We have experts in different industries because different industries, different types of buildings utilize different types of engineers. So just so you know that. By the way, something to know, it's not just for new construction, it's also for old buildings. So if you bought an old building, but you don't have depreciation in there, and there is depreciation, so you can do that also renovations. So it's something to look at. On average, we see for about $1 million of building, often we can see accelerated depreciation of, let's say, about $75,000 from that 1 million. That's depending on the type of building. Now, any commercial real estate can actually qualify, but some have more components, that ability to segregate, to qualify at a higher level. For example, hotels. I was working one hotel, and again, the carpets, and there's a lot more wear and tear on a lot of different things: medical offices, restaurants, manufacturing facilities, etc. So it's something worth to evaluate. The way we work with this is almost everything I'm presenting to you, we happen to do on contingency. We don't get paid unless you get a tax credit. So we do a lot or most of that analysis and research up front. So I always say, hey, it's worth letting us look at your documents. Then we speak with you and your tax professional, make sure that it makes sense, that you can utilize it. There's a lot of money sitting there. A lot of people are struggling and actually have money that they can utilize that they don't realize is available and pretty easily available. Cost segregation, some larger corporations, a lot of CPA firms, I understand, won't look at a building unless it's 20 million or above, maybe $3 million and above. We'll even go down to $1 million, the way that our group works, because we got in the industry about over 15 years ago, but we've really been on the leading edge, and you'll see in a second here, there's a lot you can do through technology. So we leverage the technology with our engineers so we can keep our costs down without having to send engineers generally onto location. So we generally will charge a cap of 10% on this cost segregation. Larger deals, we're capped at 10%. And so, but if you think about it, if you are able to accelerate on $1 million building $75,000 and not being paying tax on that, but you need money, a business loan on that $75,000 is, if you're lucky, largely if you're looking at a 10-15% loan. So if you're looking at 10% every year, that could be $7,500 a year. So it might be very worthwhile to look at the cost segregation for cash flow, and some of it, maybe all of it, we recaptured when you sell, but not necessarily. And we even have some people right before they sell a building. We've had clients that actually do a cost segregation right before they sell, because depending on recapture, depending on needs. So there's a lot of reasons to look at cost segregation. A lot of people don't realize it exists. It's actually been around since 1962, but that was really for the large corporations. It really didn't, based on court cases, it really didn't become accessible to small, medium-sized businesses until about 15 years ago. That's when we jumped in. And then over the last 5-10 years, technology, they've really allowed, the IRS has really made it pretty much user-friendly to be able to have this happen. But again, there is a difference between a general evaluation assumptive what the different depreciation will be, or engineered. We actually work with an engineered cost segregation. So we segregate the different parts of the business and depreciate the individual parts of that business. To be able to do it, we just want to start with seeing your depreciation schedule from your CPA, do initial analysis, speak with you or your CPA to see if it's able to utilize and make sense, things of that sort. Any questions or thoughts on that? Okay, good. Good. Let's move on. Now, this is okay. So another one, and this is really the fourth one we're looking at here, is something called R&D tax credits, research and development tax credit. This is the winner of the most misleading name in tax credits, because it's really not about just research and development. Because generally, when we think research and development, we think of people in white lab coats. Not really correct. It was actually, these have been around for a while. This was enacted in 1981 to encourage innovation. 2004, they really expanded it significantly for many activities, let's say, including design, manufacturing, processing. But people need to know it's not limited. It's really, there's much more you can do than many more companies can qualify than they realize. It's offset by your payroll tax, by the way. For architects, architectural, engineering, construction, software, if you're redesigning, getting better processes, things of this sort, you could qualify for this R&D tax credit. The specialized tax incentive group that I represent here, they actually, they have a lot of software that they've developed. They actually get the R&D tax credit for the software, for their software engineers that do some of the programming for them. So there's money that's out there a lot of people don't realize, and you can go back a few years. So what is a qualified research expenditure? So it's for wages, supplies, contact research expenditures. Let me just give you a little bit of a sense. Fabrication, engineering, new product, process development, developing new concepts, technology, designs, your layouts, prototype or modeling, different testing, software development or improvement. So if you've been creating or working on a system, it's worth looking at. And again, we do an initial analysis. We don't charge on that. We do it on contingency. At least that's what we work. And then you even developing molds and things of that sort. There's a lot that's out there, and you can look back and you potentially can qualify for every year. So a lot of money being left on the table, and what qualifies. So if you're a manufacturing, fabrication, engineering, software developer, chemical, tool and die, machine shops, pharmaceutical, there's a lot of businesses out there that can qualify. Can also qualify if you're a startup. So I just want you to realize there's quite a few of these tax credits out there. There is the employee retention credit if you have retained your employees, not only with COVID. It happens to be in other disaster zones. It happens to be the ERC does exist by county. We don't fall into any of them in the state of Washington, but there are other states and other counties that do. So what really is only applicable to our state or county is the COVID ERC. Then there's the hiring incentive. There's a lot of money on the table if you're hiring veterans, Indigenous, Native Americans, potentially people who have family on different benefits. There's different zones. There's a lot of different programs out there. People aren't taking advantage of it, and it's money that's in your pocket, and it's a program to incentivize. But you have to do it before you hire the person, at least by the first day of their work. And so we have that ability to help that happen. And then the R&D tax credits, they're giving you deductions or credits on off of your payroll. It can be very, very significant, and able to go back, I think maybe 2 or 3 years and be able to work it forward. Okay, any questions or thoughts on some of these? Yeah, John.
Hi. Quick clarification on the hiring credits that you mentioned when you hire someone who's Native American or a military personnel. Does the business have to be enrolled in a program prior to doing that, or during the recruitment process it happens to be that? Does that make sense?
Okay, good question. So 2 things. You have to have the employee fill out the proper paperwork or the proper information before, or by understanding, on the date of hire to qualify. You can't already have them employed or the day after they worked, because then it's not a hiring incentive. So it's not a program you have to be in. You have to be able to do the paperwork. So kind of a part B on that. So what happens is a lot of, especially small employers, don't do it. Or even big employers, it's too much of a headache, too much paperwork. Got to send it in. You got the 28 days. It can be really, really difficult. So there are other companies out there. My understanding, most of them work with very large companies. Our group really into technology, really looking at the market being the small and medium-sized business owner, created technology. So what they allow you to do is, in the hiring process, they have a software you can put in a prospective hiree, put in their data, their information, send them an email with anonymous, not anonymous in the sense of the person, but the information being anonymous. You don't know the answers. And we've created a list of questions for them to answer, which gives them that ability, first of all, to qualify being in the system, to start that before they're hired. And also will calculate what we understand based on our broad experience with the United States, with our AI, what the likely, and we also go in the database, state, federal, and local databases, what the likely tax credit could be. So our argument would be, yeah, better to start early and be able to do that. We do have clients that will have a desktop in one of their offices dedicated. So an employee comes in on the day of hire, the day of working, they'll just log in, do that, to make sure it qualifies. And then what our group does is, once the person's hired, you push a button, we take it for the rest. We have a tremendous amount of support. So I hope that answers your question. The question is, it's not a program you have to be in, but we have something for that benefit. And then you have to get that paper, have to have it started by the date of starting to work, and it has to be into the proper state agency within 28 days. So those are the parameters. Another factor, which I'm glad you reminded me, in order to qualify for pro rata of that benefit, they have to work 120 hours. Once they work 400 hours, you get the full benefit. So, and it doesn't have to be in a year. So you start benefiting after 120 hours, and then after 400 hours, you get the entire benefit. And and then so we basically also keep in touch with you what those hours are, and then the filing and things of that sort. So we do a lot of that back out. That answer your question? Okay, great. Any other questions or thoughts? Fair enough. Okay, so this is what I want to do. With fatigue, I want to go off of this topic. I am available if you want to have a conversation, want to explore it, know others that could benefit. There are other things that we do or that I do, but I think it's important to know the government is encouraging, and they take our money, but they're also giving it. And my thing is, if you're entitled to it, utilize it, because you'll be able to increase your cash flow, your profitability, and you'll be able to help community and hire more people. So I think it's a good thing to do. So I want to kind of step off that. I want to jump into something else. I think sometimes feel I'm more interesting than the tax credits. There's a lot of things, and I asked Araya and others. This was cool to go here. Hey John, is jumping off and just going into things I think that help all of us. There's been a lot of discussion of diversity, equity, inclusion, things of this sort. I think one of the best books out, which has nothing to do with per se those things, it's just dealing with people that we're dealing with, all business owners. We're always engaged with people. There's a book called Beyond Reason. Basically, it's by some Harvard professors in negotiation. They call it using emotions as you negotiate, but actually what's really fascinating about it's not utilizing the emotions. What's really interesting, they have an assumption. Emotions are way too complicated to work with. We're only dealing with the top of the iceberg when it comes to people's emotions. You don't know what's explosive or going on there. Whether it's our employees, whether we're negotiating with someone, whether it is our customers. So you ever called and talked to a customer or client, and it's like, what did I do wrong? The next day everything's cool, but a lot of times that has nothing to do with us. It has something to do with them. So the assumption of this work is, if you want to deal with basically with emotions, it's not going to get you far. It might get you a lot difficulty. Rather, there are 5 core concerns every single person has. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty amazing. There's 5 core concerns. If we can address 5 core concerns of each individual, what we're dealing with, there's likeliness we can bypass a lot of that emotion, and we can actually engage with them even if we don't agree with them. And they want to argue that it's to the degree that if these 5 core concerns are not met versus being met, if they're not met, it's like you're holding a person's nose underwater, and they're going to be drowning, and you're going to get all that emotion and intensity back. Versus if you address these 5 core concerns, even if the emotions are high in initial engagement, it's like giving them fresh air and oxygen and really bringing that emotion down and being able to engage with a person on a level. The 5 things seem pretty basic, but I think it's always worth exploring. And when you really drill down what they do, there's actually a lot of genius in what they're doing. But it's really appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, role. Appreciation, just want to touch on that a few minutes today. But appreciation is just appreciating what people are thinking, what they're doing, what they're feeling. We're going to discuss that a little deeper in a second. Affiliation, I don't want to get too much trouble, but I find that if we can have people feel affiliated with us, if we can find some way that we have similarities, that can go so far. My challenges today, we're finding and focusing on how we're not affiliated, how we're all different. And I think that that's creating a lot of division, a lot of angst, and a lot of suspicion. I think we can work more on seeing how do we affiliate, because every one of us is a complex being, and there's so many ways that we can actually find that we have a level of affiliation. We can focus on that. It'll bring us all together. Autonomy is pretty radical, I think. Is people like to make their own decision, not only when they're American. They really want to feel like it's my own decision. If you ever have your employee or your boss, if you let them think that they had the idea or they are able to have their own choice, or a client, you give them options, even if you know what they're going to choose, as long as the person feels that they can have autonomy for their own choice, you've just empowered them and given yourself a lot of power, a lot of ability to work with someone. So we really got to back off and give a level of autonomy. Status is an interesting one. Status is recognizing who a person is. So if you're an employer, you want to be treated in a certain way by your employee. If you're a police officer, you have an expectation of status. It's a human need, a human desire. If you're a doctor or you're a certain professional, we have a perception of what our status is, and we have a belief or a deep held sense is that status should be recognized. And if it's not, it really irks or creates some difficulties. So there's a lot more discussion on that. And then role. What role? We can have official roles defined by our jobs, or we can have roles that we take upon ourselves in a relationship. So I'm not going to delve too much into it, but I find like the role, what I find really fascinating when he really digs into it is like, I'm a talker, right? I relate to people, I talk. Sometimes you disconnect and don't always hear or listen. And so it's a struggle, even if I really want to know what's going on with an individual. But what so I've heard, talk less, okay, fine, doesn't work. Decreasing anything's always hard, right? Decreasing food intake is difficult, but increasing silence was a little bit easier. It's easier to increase things, increase lack of food, I don't know, but increasing is easier. But it still didn't have the same impact on me. What I really found impactful with drilling down in their work is, what's my role? If my role right now is to communicate and to talk, okay, that's my role. I'm an educator. But if my role is to be a listener, that changed my entire perspective. Because now in a relationship, I'm not trying to talk less. I'm not increasing my silence. I'm now putting on a new hat. And now my role is a listener. So whether it's with my spouse, an employee, a client, what's my role? So there's micro roles that either we have from a job or we can actually take on in every different relationship, recognizing ours and recognizing others. So that's just a high over touch on that. And I found it really impactful. I was with an association that they had a lot of reading in the psychology and interrelations. This was always one of the starting ones. And the more I spent time in it, the more I found it amazing. So I want to just spend a few minutes here exploring appreciation. And by the way, they have really fascinating narratives in it. One of them was because not Shapiro, the other one. He was in World War II, so he's a little elder gentleman, and he was an officer at that time in Europe during World War II. One of the key officers, I'm going to tell the whole story. Key officers, a high-ranking general, never complimented anybody. And he actually lost staff. When the author, when he approached this general, it was really interesting in the conversation. One reason he never expressed appreciation, as he said, no one has ever expressed appreciation for me. So sometimes our training, and sometimes we don't appreciate others. Sometimes we don't get appreciation, and we don't realize how far appreciation can go. And so it's really a powerful thing, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're so focused on our own achievements and what we do or standing our ground, we're nervous or scared, or we think we're going to lose, even with a competitor or with someone negotiating, lose ground by expressing our appreciation. So they're very explicit about, first of all, expressing, being verbal about your appreciation. A letter probably works also, but actually expressing it, being sincere, being authentic. We as human beings can generally get it when it's flattering and it's inauthentic. You got to be authentic. You got to be sincere. And there's enough good things about each individual that you can actually find something, right? Nobody is without a merit. So as they say, and what I found fascinating is you drill down because you hear the concept of appreciation makes sense. But what I found their concept really pretty brilliant is when you drill down, you can find merit in what a person thinks, what a person feels, and what they do. So what their thoughts are, their feelings, and their actions. And what's pretty, I found impressive is, what they're thinking, what's their logic, what's their reasoning, what's their point of view. And what's really incredible here is you don't have to agree with the person, right? I don't have to agree with what you're thinking for me to appreciate it. I can say, hey, that's really logical, or I understand your reasoning, but I disagree. That also shows in a tremendous amount of appreciation. I appreciate your point of view. I'm getting into your shoes. I deter. I don't agree. Like, I'm going through a lot of different conversations, a lot of people, especially with what's going on in the world, trying to understand what they're thinking, because there's so many things going on that is very foreign to me. And I'm finding there's a lot of things I still disagree with, but hey, I'm able to have a really sincere conversation because I'm really trying to get into their head. I'm appreciating where they're coming from. I don't have to agree. And it's very, very powerful, because once a person feels, actually, I shouldn't use the word feel here. Once a person senses or thinks that you're at least appreciating what they're thinking, they put down a lot of barriers, unless they're really bad actors. And I think most people are really generally good people. And we get into conflicts a lot of times with just having that lack of appreciation of what people are thinking and identifying it. Then also feelings, emotions, your core concerns. What's motivating a person? What's important to them? Why are they feeling this way? It's very interesting. If a person's feeling some way, that's because something's touching their something that's raw. So, and we often, if we don't feel something, what another person is, we think they're odd or weird. This is not a great illustration, but I think it touches on it. Have you ever had a tremendous pain? Let's say you have a pain in your back, you threw your back out, or even you're not feeling well. Well, so sometimes when you're not feeling well, sometimes you see it in your face. But what's interesting about pain, it's really a silent enemy, or it's something that's silent that nobody else really identifies. So if you're having a horrible day because you're in pain, or you're really light on your your patience. So there's a lot of reasons. What I'm saying is a lot of reasons people act different ways, and what's going on in a person. And no, it's really a good example. It just came to my head though. But the thing is, if something's touching a person, then it's important and it's essential to who they are. So if they're off the rocker, unless they're just off the rocker, if something's touching them and something's going on, that's because something's important to them and something's motivating to them. You might not care. You might not really really truly emotionally be able to empathize, but there's ability to at least appreciate what they're feeling. And, understanding, like, for example, I enjoy animals. Cats are fine. I got 5 kids. I don't have a lot of, I told my wife, next husband having animals, you want animals, but I like animals, things of this sort. I don't have a full appreciation, but I know clients that have a pet or an animal and it will die. That creates a tremendous real void in a person's life. I don't relate to it, but I can definitely identify and appreciate that emotion because it's real. Now, and because it's real to them, it actually is real in reality. And I don't have to, again, I don't have to really agree with it, but I at least can touch and I can connect with a person on that level. And then what a person does. This was even to me the most powerful and the one I really never thought about, in the sense of appreciating what someone does, their actions and their effort. And I think this is critical, especially for, let's say, employees. A lot of times, is appreciating their effort and actions, even if it's not successful. I might discard or not go with an idea of a person or the project. If I don't appreciate all the effort they put in, I'm going to lose that person's engagement. So the thing is that we usually think to appreciate someone's effort when they're successful, or something I can utilize. What I think this bridges is going beyond that, because obviously that's a time we should express appreciation, but expressing appreciation when things don't work, when things potentially fail, when things, I can't utilize it. There's a lot of power in being able to connect with people, and not only that, you're bringing sunshine to the person's to a person, because if they didn't succeed, they want to go into a hole. And if you appreciate the success, the effort, the learning, or whatever, you've given sunshine to that person's day, and you've connected. So by being able to appreciate what a person's thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're doing, whether we agree with them, whether we can actually fully realistically empathize because it's too foreign to us, or even it's not successful, we are connecting at the deepest level with that person. We're giving them oxygen. They feel connected. And if we don't do that, we pretty much drowning them. And even if they had good emotions, they're gone. And if they have bad emotions, we sometimes can really put that tone down. And so I just wanted to kind of share that, because I found that to be really powerful. And sorry about that. And just because we're out of time, a couple of things to do to help us achieve this. You got to listen to the music, not just to the words. We all talk about the nonverbals, the mood, the character, atmosphere, what's going on. That's what we got to tune in to really be able to perceive a person, get a sense of who they are, and also listen to what they call the meta messages. A lot of people, when they talk, a lot of times they're hiding a lot of information. So we got to really turn on that listening ear. And by appreciating them, a lot of times what we can do is you can put down the barriers, and we kind of open ourselves up to actually being able to hear them, and they want to actually sing and talk and connect and communicate with us. So I just want to express my thank you, my appreciation to all of you who've taken the time. I hope that this brought value, either awareness or the ability to increase your profits and your cash flow by these tax incentives. I'm more than happy to help with them. You talk to your other tax professionals. And also with Zoom fatigue, I give that much more credit to joining us, and I hope I brought some value to this work. I give it to clergy. I think this is one of the greatest gifts I can give to a person, is this work called Beyond Reason. So thank you very much, and thank you, Araya. You're a ray of sunshine, as they say, and hope we bring sunshine into the world and into our daily lives, especially with some of the dark world that we have today. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. And I definitely appreciate you speaking with us today as well. And as I mentioned before, we will have some presentation and contact information sent out to you guys after this event, and it'll be available for you to view on YouTube as well. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Richard directly. His contact information is here, or you can email the chamber as well, and we'll be happy to soft connect you. So if no one has anything, we'll give you back the rest of your morning. Have a great week. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Take care. Texting's also a great way to be in